Well, hello, good evening and welcome. It's myself and Robert here as always. Let me just spotlight ourselves in here and add to spotlight. Good to see you guys all inside the room this evening. If you are inside the Inner Circle Facebook group, the link's near the video in the description and you can come and join the live Zoom call. We are monitoring the group because I know Chris, who's in the group, had a problem one week. And that was the 1 week when I wasn't monitoring the Inner Circle group. So apologies about that, Chris. But it's good to see you here tonight. And lots to talk about. We'll be talking about the hosting on the Inner Circle part only. That's been an interesting week. But you always get glitches when you switch over. But we have our own server now, fully managed, fully running really well. There's a couple of minor glitches, which I know the support guys that have been sorting out today. We are getting there. So those that have our hosting, if you have any issues, raise a support ticket and we'll be happy to to keep an eye on that over the next few days and it'll settle down. But the main thing tonight we want to talk about was why build a mass page website. And there's a question that came up in the week by somebody who was having a few issues with Lead Simplify and Magic Page plugin itself, and so we got chatting about it, and I was asked that very question. And the thing is, Google loves local websites. That's the thing about this. Google's getting very more local, and if you can find a cheap way of buying a little bit of advertising from them, a few pennies a click or whatever it may be, that can actually help you in the long term. But don't go mad on it. I've known people spend thousands of dollars on Google advertising and not seen the return. You have to plan your return. So in other words, if each person that came to your website costs you, let's say, 10 cents, for an example, right? And your return's going to be per customer $10, that's fantastic. But if your advertising, let's say a month cost you $500 and your return coming back was less, that's not so good. So you have to get your balance right. But as we've always said, Google absolutely loves Google as well. So when you eventually get a GMB, which is the last thing we recommend you do, set yourself up properly. And when you get a GMB, add a Google website to it. Because Google loves Google. Google loves YouTube because Google owns YouTube. Any Google properties will help you in the long term. But when it comes down to mass page websites, the main reason that we build them the way we do is you have keyword times location. So you have your main keyword, let's say it was a plumber, and the location is London. That's okay to have one single page saying London, but what if you could hit all the local areas around London as well? Because London never used to be as big as it is now in the UK. As I grew up, I remember like Edgware being its own little area. Now it's been swallowed up by London. So you've got to think of it in a way of suburbs or smaller areas within inside an area will help you work these things out. Yeah. And Robert and I were talking about this week, funny enough, that there's like you can get your major cities, and I call them suburbs, but they may be called given a different name. So not necessarily towns of inside a town cities, but smaller locations.
Regional areas within a certain area.
Yeah.
You have specific well-known spots that are within a city but aren't called the city name. Like if you think about, like for instance, in Florida, you have Miami-Dade, right? Miami is a huge city, but there is all kinds of specialized areas that you can think about targeting, but yet they're not a city name. But going back to what you were already saying, Stephen, I just want to touch on that. All search engines want to do is give the searcher the result that best answers his inquiry. And if you think about it, whatever the example is, if you're going to search for a hospital and you're on your phone and you need a hospital, if Google's going to answer all the hospitals that are 3 hours away, it doesn't make any sense for the searcher. They want to give the local hospital that's 5 minutes away to the person searching for an emergency situation hospital, right?
Yeah.
And if you always come back to that, that's where this has been heading. And I've been saying this for 5 years, that it's always going to come back to local. It's always going to be the search result that is based on the closest locality to your inquiry. So whether it's a hospital, whether it's a doctor, whether it's a pizza place, whether it's a whatever, they want to give you that result. And that's why the mass pages with the location pages it's such a big win. Because if you're in a particular area, in a particular city, and you put in a search inquiry into your phone, Google's going to give you that closest page to that inquiry. So now if you're doing a home services for emergency plumbing and you're in a particular city and there's a page with that city name on it, that's what they're going to deliver. It's logically, it makes sense. So anyways, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Stephen.
No, that's a very good description of that. And so the conversation led into that initially, and inner circle members only. I've got a bit of extra training in Magic Page plugin to show you something that a lot of people don't realize what you can do to expand your areas. So we'll be showing that in the inner circle members only when we break out in a little while to that only. So that would be really good to show you guys. But the other thing that came up, the person I was talking to was saying, okay, I've got one of the templates set up that I had fun installing in the first place. It wasn't it wasn't a DFY theme. I won't say where it came from, but it was one that he tried loading as a theme into Elementor and struggled with it until he found out the right way of installing it. But the main point with it was that he got the site up and running, and then he went, okay, what do I need on the site? I said, you need more content. And he panicked on the Zoom call. He panicked. He went, what do you mean more content? How do I do more content? And I said, look, don't overthink things, right? There's a few ways of getting more content. One way to go and look at someone else's site and rewrite it in your own words, and always rewrite it in your own words, because if you copy a site like for like, it's likely you're going to get your hand smacked. If someone else knows you've copied their site, changed some images and changed the site around a bit, you're not going to get away with that. So, but you can take any written content online and rewrite it in your own words, and that's one easy way of getting content. Some AI content writers, and Google's getting very clever with its own AI technology, knowing if it's been written by an AI bot. Well, plain and simple, if you've used an AI product and you've got that content inside your website, rewrite it a little bit more. Go around and look at the wording and say, well, I'd type it as this, and just change it just enough to fool Google into thinking that it's fresh content. How it can tell it's AI content, I haven't got a clue, but I think it's getting more and more clever. They reckon in the future cars are going to drive, well, they already are driving themselves. And if one day I think we won't have driver cars, it'll be bring up for a car, it turns up and takes you where you want to go. And that's AI technology. It's getting very scary what some technology can do. And then we led on to security. And one thing I want to really emphasize with your WordPress sites, don't use the admin login. All right, don't use the word info as your username, and do not use password or 123 as your password. Right, if anyone's ever stuck, use a product like LastPass. And I've got LastPass on my machine. I change my LastPass main password monthly, so it means no one can get into it if it got out by mistake. Data online is shared by companies left, right, and center, and also there's data breaches. And there's a great website which you can go and look. Have I been pwned? I'll look it up for the Inner Circle members and share the link when we break out. And you can put your email address in. It tells you if your data's been leaked on the internet by your email address. Right, and then you got to think to yourself, okay, well, have I got any financial links? Have I got a product like Amazon? And that's my email address on Amazon. And have I got credit cards on there? If I have, I better blooming quickly change the password on Amazon, maybe even the email address, to be on the safe side. So what I do with all my accounts, whether it's WordPress or whatever, I have a set of email addresses for WordPress. I have a set of email addresses for financial, like banks and stuff, and I have a different one for Amazon. So just make sure that when you set up your WordPress sites, that you use a unique username. Don't go saying that's a common thing, right? Is people put a number in front of their names, right? Don't do that for your password. Come up with something unique, and that's the bonus with LastPass. You can generate a really weird password, save it inside a LastPass, and then you've got one password at the front end, which obviously you must change regularly to make sure no one gets in. But that's a unique password. Let me ask people in the room, how many of you would have a password maybe with your name in, or with a date of birth of a family member, or something like that? Because if you do, right, that's the fastest way to get a password guessed. And check all your WordPress sites and don't use admin. The other common email addresses that people use on their systems, info. I've stopped using info now because that's the most spammed email address, and admin as well. I will come up with something a bit more unique for my website rather than just info. So,
well, unfortunately, in today's world, we have to be security conscious in everything.
Yeah,
and even the most secure things are still breakable. I mean, if my wife says it all the time, if crooks could use their smarts for the good of mankind, we'd be so much better off. But the really smart guys are the ones that break into the banks and transfer the money without you knowing it's been transferred, and that kind of stuff. And if you study computers and networking and networks and how servers work, it's really simplistic in how the information is transferred from server to server to server across the world. And once you figured that out, and there's just those certain people that see how to break it very easily and get in and take what they want and leave. So even like with the double authentication, where it asks for your phone. There's all kinds of ways that the smart people can break that. And we're not here to cause panic, but you got to be aware of what you're putting in your computers and what you're putting in your laptops, and going to the local coffee shop and using your laptop and forgetting that you opened up your network to public.
Yeah.
So anyways,
Absolutely. So we are going to now, we've been on for 15 minutes and we're going to say goodbye to the free groups, unfortunately, because we're going to share the inside information on how you can play around with Magic Page plugin and the local locations. We're going to share. I'm going to show the Have I Been Pwned website as well, and then we're going to talk about the hosting with DFY Magic Themes. So, is there anything else you want to add while I load the video, Robert, to the free channels and say goodnight?
All I'm going to say is, if you haven't looked into the DFY Inner Circle mentoring, you're shortcutting your learning curve by being part of our network. So you need to get in here. It's $47.20 a month. There's no contract to it that you have to be there a certain length of time or anything. You come in, join, quit whenever you want to quit. But the reality is, this is a lonely business. And if you're not part of being in a support group that is supporting what you're trying to achieve, it's going to take you a lot longer. I wish I had learned that a very long time ago. I wish that I had not tried to do it on my own for so very long. And when I broke down and finally said, you know what, I'm going to hire a mentor. I'm going to get this stuff figured out. That's when I could have done that 5 years in advance. I did actually look into some other mentoring that they didn't pan out. They didn't support the product. And I think, to be 100% transparent, why Stephen and I spend so much time supporting our people in their little bit of roadblocks, a little bit of trouble and going that extra mile, is because him and I didn't get it when we needed it. And now we're not going to repeat that. And that's why we call ourselves defiers. We're defying the way that we were taught. And we're going to teach what people need to know and what they need to get to make sure they get their sites built and get to where they want to go.
Absolutely. Right, I'm going to hit this and turn off the free groups, and then we'll carry on with what we need to talk about.